Hi, I'm Alexis, welcome to Alexis Guitars and welcome to part 2 of my Great Guitar Build Off 2021 Scratch Build. So this episode is all about building a guitar neck, and not just that, it's my first ever neck that I've ever built. Now at the time of filming this intro, I have done all of the work that you're about to see in this video, so I'll show you the neck in its finished form at the end. Before we get stuck into today's episode, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that's watched, that's liked, that's commented on my previous episode, part 1 of this build series. I really do appreciate it, especially all the comments, all the words of encouragement, all the tips that you've given me, super helpful. Please do keep them coming, especially for this episode, because I've never made a guitar neck before. This is the first time I've ever done it. So please do give me some tips, things that I could do differently next time, things that you would have done differently. I really would appreciate it. So what you're going to see in this episode is everything from me making my first ever guitar neck template and turning that into my first ever guitar neck. All of the steps involved in making this neck has been a huge learning curve. Everything has been new for me and it's been so much fun. I've really enjoyed making the guitar neck. So let's just get right to it. The video is probably going to be long enough. So I found this really helpful template of a Telecaster neck online and printed it off in poster mode, which means it printed off in different A4 size bits of paper, which I then cut up and had to very carefully align. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out in terms of how straight all the edges are, and I used some spray glue to glue this onto some plywood. I decided to go for plywood this time for the template of a neck because I just figured it would be easier to get more consistent straight lines than using chipboard, which is what I use for the body. I changed the headstock up a little bit just to make it a little bit more my own. I do really like a Telecaster headstock, but for this competition I thought it would be nicer to do my own thing rather than just copy a Telecaster neck. So time to get cutting, shaping and making sure it's all nice and straight. Okay, so my first ever attempt at making a guitar neck template seems to have gone pretty well. So I'm very suspicious about that. I assume I've done something terribly wrong. So before I actually go and shape any neck out, I'm going to be revisiting this and just double checking all the measurements and making sure it actually is as successful as it seems. Nevertheless, I thought now might be a good time to talk through the materials I'm going to be using for the neck. Now I've got this thick piece of wood here. Unfortunately, I don't know what wood it is. I think, I have a suspicion it's oak, but I'm not sure. Maybe when I sand it down, it will reveal the grain a little bit more and it might make it a bit more obvious, but I'm not sure what wood it is. But it's about 3 centimeters thick, which is great because that gives me some leeway to flatten this whole thing out and still have enough thickness for the neck. Now I've actually got about 3 or 4 of these bits of wood, and the idea did come up of, rather than just using one piece for the neck, of gluing 2 together like this, and then having a 2-piece neck that's a bit stronger. I then thought actually it might be a better idea for my first ever guitar neck to just use 1 piece of wood. In case I get it wrong, I've only damaged 1 piece of wood and not ruined 2. Someone asked me in my last video where I actually get all of these bits of wood from, which I think is a fair enough question to ask considering a lot of the bits of wood I have, I don't know what they are. I'm simply fortunate in that an acquaintance just simply didn't need these anymore and was going to get rid of them, so I asked if I could just take them. All of the bits of wood and veneers which I got from that person were going to be thrown away, so I kind of saved them, and they've been sitting just stacked on top of each other in a basement for about 10 years, so they're not all in the best condition. There's a bit of warping in some of them, a lot of the veneers are a bit warped, but I'll come to that in another video. Now coming back to the neck, I obviously don't need this whole length here, so I'm going to cut it down more to size, and I'm also going to cut the side straight so that I don't have this angle over here. So I thought I'd give you an update on the guitar neck before I do any further work to it, and the weather's awful outside, so I've moved into my living room for this bit of a video. Now, to cut a long story short, I'm really happy with it so far, but it's far from perfect, which to be honest I think is slowly becoming a theme for my guitar build. Now overall I'm really happy with the shape of the body. I think it looks really cool. I really like the headstock design. My idea with this little cutaway thing here is that I wanted it to mirror the shape of the lower cutaway on the guitar body. It didn't actually end up mirroring that, but I'm still happy with it anyway. I think it looks pretty cool. Now there's a few little issues with the neck blank, and they range from not really a big deal to something that requires a bit more problem solving. Now I'll start with the less problematic easy fix issues, and those are a couple chips when I was routing up the shape of this. There's one chip up here right at the top, which is a bit annoying, but I then realized it's not a problem at all because I'm going to be routing the depth down to this. I'm going to be routing the depth of this down by, I don't know exactly at this stage, but maybe a centimeter or so. So this chip up here isn't even going to show on the final thing because I'm going to route it away anyway. The other chip is a bit more annoying, but again should be an easy fix because it's just up here at the top of the heel, and I should be able just to get some sandpaper, get some dust and super glue and fill up that hole. So that's not really an issue, and it's right at the end of the neck anyway. Now moving on to the slightly more problematic issues, the ones which are going to require a bit more thought about how I resolve them. So as you saw, I just used a router along my template, and I'm not the best with a router, and I'm also not the best at making templates, and that resulted in a pretty good job, but not a perfect job. So there's a few little areas where the side kind of dips ever so slightly, and there's one kind of prominent one here, and there's a few others that when you just run your hand up and down, you can just feel it. So some of them aren't a big deal at all, and by the time it all gets sanded down and carved to shape, I really doubt it's going to be that problematic, but some of them are going to be a bit of an issue. When I say issue, I mean I'm going to feel it. So now the only idea that I've got at the moment, I'll give it a bit more thought, but the idea I've got at the moment is just to get some sandpaper on a straight edge and sand it down a little bit and try and even the whole thing out. My issue with that is I don't want to remove too much material, so I'm going to have to be careful. So I need to give that a bit more thought, but that's what I'm thinking at the moment. In the meantime, I've redrawn my center line on this thing, and I've got a truss rod. And I got myself a truss rod from Amazon. I expected these to be a lot wider. This is a really narrow one. Could just be because it's like the cheapest one, just from Amazon, which I got. And I've drawn out where it's going to go, but it might be that I need to adjust that when I do a bit more sanding on the sides. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of the neck build. So far it's been really fun, and like I said, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's far from perfect, but I think, to be honest, an alright job is the best I can hope for, and this is alright. So on with the build. Alright, the truss rod is installed. I can't believe I've actually done this pretty well, if I do say so myself. You can see here, it's pretty flush with the body. It dips in a little bit there, and again, a little bit here. That could just mean, actually here it's pretty flush, so that just means that the truss rod just needs a bit of adjustment for it to be straight. And it's a little bit proud here, but I can live with that. I can fix that as well. I had to use the chisel a little bit for the ends there, just to make it wide enough, and a little bit here to square off where the router had a round end there. So I'm happy with that. I know that's like the most basic of woodworking skills, but I installed my first truss rod. I'm pretty chuffed with that. I'm not sure if I should also do a little channel here, just a couple, maybe 2 centimeters long there. I don't know if that's going to help me out a little bit later in terms of drilling a hole to connect into that. I think I might. I'm going to give it a go. Just a little update, I decided to go for it in the end and went with this little thing. So I did it about just over 2 centimeters long, maybe 2.5 centimeters. I tried to match the depth, and when I kind of, in the typical Fender style, when I lower this bit, then I should be able just to drill a nice straight line to go through. So hopefully that helped me out. In the meantime, I'm just going to bask in the fact that so far this has been successful. So it's been about a week since I routed out the truss rod cavity in my neck. I've just been super busy. I haven't had any time to make any progress. But now I've got a bit of a break, so I can move on to the fretboard. Now for the fretboard, I thought I'd use this big piece of oak here. I think it's oak. Let me move it in the sun so you can get a nicer view of that, or I'll get some close-ups a bit later. Now, like I said, I think this is oak. It's about 2 centimeters thick in its thickest point, maybe slightly more, and it's a little bit warped. So before I do any work turning this into a fretboard, I'm going to need to flatten this out, so I use my router jig for that, and straighten up the side so I can work with it a little bit easier. Now, there's probably enough thickness in this that even when I flatten it all out, that I could probably make 2 fretboards out of this. I simply don't have the tools or the precision to be able to do that. So unfortunately, it's going to be a bit of wood going to waste, but I'm going to reduce this down to just under 1 centimeter's thickness, maybe about 8-9 millimeters, and take it from there. Now, at the moment, it's looking like the guitar is going to be an oak neck and an oak fretboard. Now, I've heard mixed and contradictory and diverse things about using oak in guitar builds, ranging from it's not even a tone wood and it will suck out any life from your guitar, to I think Ben Crow in a video said that it's quite a bright, or it allows for a brighter tone in a guitar. But I've also heard that it's actually a little bit unstable for a neck, that maybe it bends a little bit or moves a little bit too much, and others say it's completely fine. So this is my first neck. I'm putting this down to practice. I'm going to see how usable it even is at the end of it. But if you know anything about using oak for guitar builds, please let me know in the comments below what your thoughts of it are. So coming back to the fretboard and the next steps I need to do, once I've got this to the right thickness, I've got it flat on both sides and straight edges, the plan was to start fretting it. Unfortunately, I've had a bit of a setback. Now, I ordered myself a fret spacing ruler for a 25.5 inch, scale length. And I'm not going to say the name of the company I ordered it from, but it was packaged really, really poorly. It was literally just wrapped around in a few bits of newspaper, stuck in like a cardboard pocket or sleeve, and posted out to me. So obviously by the time it had arrived, the ruler was bent, so absolutely useless. So I'm sending that one back, getting a refund of course, and I've gone to another online store. So even though I need to wait for that ruler to arrive before I can start fretting anything, there's still plenty of jobs I can do on the guitar. So I thought I'd give you a quick update on the fretboard so far. As you've seen, I've used a variety of different techniques, and I avoided using the router, my router jig to flatten it out. I ended up first using a hand plane, which I'm not great with, well, I'm not that good with at all, because I always, no matter how hard I try, I always get an angle. There's always one side that's narrower than the other, and that's what's happened here in the middle. So it kind of goes down a little bit. My main priority right now is getting one side completely flat so I can at least glue it down properly, because I figured if one side is flat, say this one for example, I could glue it down onto the neck, and then this side, which is still a little bit uneven, I'm going to be using a 12-inch radius block anyway to sand this all down. So I'm thinking right now I just need one side that's completely flat. Let me know in the comments below if that's a big mistake. I might even find out a bit later. But also, just to point out, this is a really nice looking, it's going to be a really nice looking fretboard. I really like the grain. I think oak gets a bit of a hard time. I think it's a really nice looking wood. If this even is oak. I think it is though. So more fun sanding to do, and yeah, take it from there. So after hours and hours of sanding, I gave in and used my router jig just to flatten this all out, because I couldn't get that little dip in the middle out just from sanding. It was taking far too long. So used a router jig, then my straight edge with some sandpaper to smoothen it all out, and this side is smooth and flat for gluing down to the neck. There's a couple little imperfections there. I'm hoping the wood glue will fill those. Maybe I'll get some sanding dust and fill them in myself and then smoothen it out again. Actually, that is probably what I'm going to do. And this side is going to be glued down. The other side is a bit rougher. I haven't really worked on that too much, but once it's glued on the neck, I can then smoothen it out a little bit, cut out the fret slots, and then radius it down to a 12-inch radius, and that should remove a lot of the imperfections, because I need to lose a bit of depth anyway. I think it's about 7 millimeters at this stage, which for this stage in the build is about as thin as I want it to be, but when I actually get it on the guitar neck, I want it a little bit thinner than that. Well, I think it's time. Time to install the truss rod and glue on the fretboard. I've got all my clamps, you can see, laid out for me. I've got about 13 or so. I don't know how many I'm going to need to use. I'm going to do a dry clamp first, and take it from there. Just a quick update, I decided to get rid of a little bit, rather than drill a little tunnel, I decided just to cut that whole thing away. And there's a little ledge in the middle there that will stop any kind of sliding, so that is easier for me rather than drilling the hole here and drilling one on this side to try and match it all up nicely. And the fretboard's got to cover that bit anyway, so should look alright in the end. Well then, I'm going to give this a practice dry clamp and take it from there. Well, here goes nothing. Let's give this a go. Alright, well that was super stressful, but there is a nice even spread of, I don't even know if I can capture that on camera, but there's a nice even spread of the glue spilling out. Let's go around. You can see it more here, yeah, nice even spread of glue spurting out. So, man, I just got this feeling I messed this up. That was really stressful. Nothing I can do now. Time to wait it out. Ooh, yes. Well, so far this is going very well. I've reduced the depth of this by 5 mil compared to the rest, and obviously all of this will be part of that curve that goes up. So I'll do that a little bit later. Now I need to do the same thing on the other side and basically remove about 1 centimeter's worth of depth from the back all the way across. Okay, things are getting serious now, and I'm feeling it. So I've made myself this little makeshift fret slotting jig. As you can hopefully make out, the neck which I've done is glued onto a fret slotting ruler, just an acrylic one. I'm using this side here, 25.5" scale. And just here at the edge there's a little locating pin that locks into place and stops it from shifting. I've got these two straight edges and they're kind of in a line with each other. I say kind of, hopefully they're perfectly in a line with each other. And that's how I'm gonna mess up this guitar. Hopefully not. We'll see. So all done fretting the fretboard. I'm not confident that this went well. My saw was ever so slightly at an angle. I'm obviously exaggerating just to show you. But I continued because I figured as long as all of them are at the same angle, shouldn't really matter. And I don't think it's going to be enough to really notice when you just look at the frets themselves. Kind of around here, I was a bit unsure whether my fretboard was kind of shifting a little bit. I tried my best to keep it in the same position, so not sure about the accuracy of all of these. But I guess I'm not going to know until I fret it all up. Actually, I'm going to measure first, but I'm not going to know how severe it is until I actually put strings on this. I must say though, I do like how it's looking. Okay, well I've got both sides faceted now, and this has been so much fun. I've been waiting for this job since starting the neck, and it hasn't disappointed. I've been enjoying this so much. It's not easy. It's not that difficult. It's more just a practice thing. It's actually pretty tricky to get the what's it called, Shinto rasp, to get that at the right angle straight away just from eyeballing it. That's something I need a bit of practice, just kind of getting the right angle on. But it's something that, I mean, it's all going to be rounded off anyway, so I don't really mind that if there's any kind of slight imperfections, because it's all going to be curved. This is just to get the rough kind of shape. So I'm really happy so far, and going to keep going. So that's most of the facets done. You can see I got a bit overzealous here. But considering it's all going to be rounded over, I am really happy with that. You can kind of see the facets a bit better there. So after all of that, I'm super happy to announce that I have made my first ever guitar neck, and I couldn't be happier. This whole episode has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed it. The whole thing, every step has been a huge learning curve for me. So much of this was brand new. A lot of the things I had to figure out how to do. I've been watching loads of videos. I've been watching loads of other great guitar build-off videos, which have been super helpful in terms of learning how to make a guitar neck. And I'm so happy with the result. Don't get me wrong, it's far from perfect. There's some things that I'm going to talk about them which didn't quite go so well, but overall, I think this is going to be a functioning neck. So just to go over some specs, this is a 25.5-inch scale length, 42 millimeters at the nuts, although it might be 41 by now after all of that sanding, unfortunately. That's one of the things I'll talk about in a bit. And the fretboard is a 12-inch radius. And just as we're on the fretboard, I just want to say I absolutely love the fretboard. I think it looks really, really nice. I still need to sand it a little bit more just to lower the depth ever so slightly, but it's looking and feeling fantastic. The neck, I can't say what profile it is, but I deliberately made a thicker neck than what I'm used to because I've heard so many people talk about those kind of baseball style necks, those really thick necks, and I've tried a few guitars with them, but I've never owned a guitar with a really thick neck. So I decided to make this one super thick, and it's so comfortable. Honestly, it's so comfortable. I absolutely love it. The neck itself, normally on the guitars which I'm used to, or on the necks that I'm used to, it kind of goes like here's the heel and it kind of goes up a little bit for the actual neck, but here it's pretty stable, it's pretty straight, which means it's a nice thick, probably a C shape, and yeah, absolutely love it. Now just to go over some of the things which didn't quite go so well, and I'm going to start with the headstock. First of all, I like the shape. The shape is fine, that's not the issue. The problem is I decided to reduce some of the thickness using a belt sander, which was a really dumb idea. Nothing wrong with a belt sander, the problem was me using it. And I kind of got it at a slight angle, and there's a bit of a dip here. I also took away a bit too much material. So here, the fretboard is about, the headstock is about 13 millimeters thick, and 13.4 maybe here, 13.6 there, nothing I'm particularly concerned about. Here it goes, it's about 14 millimeters, so I need to flatten that. But over here, it's 12 millimeters. Now, I don't particularly care about down here. This is just where the logo is going to be. This is the important bit. But 13 millimeters is pretty narrow, or it's not very thick. So I'm thinking what I'm going to need to do is stick a veneer on top of this. First of all, flatten it all out, and then stick a veneer on top of it. I'm going to match the veneer to the veneer I'm using for the guitar body, so it should look good in the end. But I've never worked with veneers before, so that's going to be an experience. The other thing which could have gone slightly better is as I was sanding or rounding off the neck just by getting the sanding paper and just kind of going along the sides like this, I went at it a little bit rough and I started to curve the fretboard ever so slightly in certain places. So right up here by the nuts, just in front of the nut here or below the nut, it kind of dips in a little bit just because the fretboard kind of curves in. So what I need to do is just flatten the, well not flatten, but keep sanding the fretboard even further just to reduce a little bit of the depth, and hopefully that will alleviate the problem. Other than that, the hardest bit of this was absolutely cutting the fret slots. Now that was something I was super nervous about. It is a tricky job, and I didn't build myself the best jig. But I did measure this with a, what are they called, calipers, digital calipers, and it's all pretty good. Down here at the end, it's a little bit, I'm not quite sure how it went, how accurate these last two are. But to be honest, I never go down there. And if I ever do go down here, it's only to bend up, as if I ever do those power solos like that. But if I do, it's only ever to bend up. And so it doesn't really matter if the fret itself is accurate, because I'm going to bend up to the note I need. But this is the dusty end of the fretboard. I very, very rarely go down here. So it's been a lot of work and a lot of fun getting to this stage, but there's still a little bit more work to do. I'm going to leave all of that for next episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. Leave a comment below telling me what you thought about the neck. If you've got any tips for me as well, that'll be super helpful. And if you enjoyed this video and want to watch more content like this, please do consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching again. That's all from me for today. Till next time.